Oh, Clarence Thomas, you've been a really, really bad boy, it turns out, in increasingly novel ways. Here's a fun one where he's benefited from his incredibly close, lucrative relationship with GOP megadonor Harlan Crow. Back in 2008, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas decided to send his teenage grandnephew, who, according to him, he was raising like a son, to Hidden Lake Academy, a private boarding school in the foothills of northern Georgia. Now, you need to understand that tuition at this boarding school ran more than $6,000 a month. In 2008, dear Lord, these people live lives unlike ours. But here's the interesting thing. Despite that very big bill, it was not Clarence Thomas who actually footed it. In fact, thanks to the analysis and investigation of ProPublica, we got this little document where we actually found out who was paying the $6,200 a month. And do you see it? If you zoom in and enhance grid G6, you can see Crow Holdings. And you might think, isn't that one of the criminal organizations from Batman? Probably. I haven't seen all of that. I can't attest to that. But what it is Harlan Crow's business, one of them. And so once again, Harlan Crow to the rescue when the disaster is Clarence Thomas having to pay for things for himself. So a bank statement for the school from July 2009 buried in unrelated court filings shows that that was the person who paid Martin's tuition for that month. But here's the thing, it wasn't just $6,200, as distressing as that would potentially be. The payments extended well beyond that month, according to Christopher Grimwood, former administrator at the school. Crow paid Martin's tuition the entire time he was a student there, which was about a year. But even that isn't all of it. Before and after his time at Hidden Lake, where I think they make ranch dressing, Martin attended a second boarding school, Randolph-Macon Academy in Virginia, which again sounds like the sort of place that incredibly wealthy, privileged people go. Harlan said he was paying for the tuition at Randolph-Macon Academy as well, according to Grimwood, recalling a conversation he had with Crow during a visit to the billionaire's Adirondacks estate. Isn't it nice to have an estate? Do you appreciate your estate on a daily basis? You should give some respect to your estate. Anyway, by the way, the school administrator is going to the billionaire's estate. This is all just so incestuous and dirty. In any event, the exact amount that Crow paid for Martin's education over the years and through multiple fancy private schools remains unclear. But if he paid for all 4 years at the two schools, the price tag could have exceeded $150,000. According to public records of tuition rates at the schools from that time. So you might be wondering, why would this guy be paying potentially $150,000 for the grandnephew of one of his buddies? Well, whatever the reason is, we know what it isn't, and that is corruption. So get that right out of your mind. His office sent a message saying, it's disappointing that those with partisan political interests would try to turn helping at-risk youth with tuition assistance into something nefarious and political. Look, if we could normalize billionaires spending their wealth to help at-risk youth rather than all of the nonsense that they get up to, I would be fine with that. And is that in some sense what this is? Maybe. But there's a lot of measures that can be taken to protect this at-risk youth that don't, I think, rise to the level of paying many thousands of dollars a month for a number of different private schools, particularly for a guy who the uncle of which was a Supreme Court justice at that point. And so, look, I don't know if you buy what Harlan Crow is saying about why he decided to do this charity in this one case for an incredibly well-connected young kid. But even if you do, that still leaves Clarence Thomas. So what do we think about that? Well, interestingly, Thomas did not report the tuition payments from Crow on his annual financial disclosures. Now that fits in with everything that Clarence Thomas has done. But here is where it gets interesting. Several years earlier, Thomas disclosed a gift of $5,000 for Martin's education from another friend. It's not clear why he reported that payment, but not Crow's, says ProPublica. And they do need to say that because they're a very responsible journalistic outlet. The rest of us, though, can think it's probably pretty clear why he's in it in the one case and not the other. First of all, it's way more than $5,000. Second of all, it's a guy who has repeatedly had business before the Supreme Court. And so you might have a vested interest in protecting knowledge of one of them and not the other. But before we gloss over that, he got $5,000 from another friend too. I will remind you, Clarence Thomas is a Supreme Court justice. He had been a Supreme Court justice for many years at that point. They make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just purely based off of their tuition, and they make tons of other money from things like the private teaching gigs that we were talking about earlier this week, as well as speeches and book deals and all of that stuff. Why was Clarence Thomas so desperate to be given money from billionaire buddies to help out his nephew when he definitely has the money to do it himself? That's interesting. Perhaps we'll return to that. And by the way, we're focusing on this most recent development, but if you haven't been following all of the news that's come out, primarily, by the way, to the great credit of ProPublica, thanks to their efforts, here is a little bit of a recap of just some of the distressing news when it comes to the possibility of the perception of corruption when it comes to Clarence Thomas. Last month, they reported that Thomas accepted luxury travel from Crow virtually every year for decades, including international super yacht cruises and private jet flights around the world. Crow also paid money to Thomas and his relatives in an undisclosed real estate deal. After he purchased the house where Thomas's mother lived, he poured tens of thousands of dollars into improving the property, as well as buying neighboring properties, then demolishing them so nobody would live nearby her and play music loud. Roughly 15 years ago, Crow donated much of the budget of a political group founded by Thomas's wife, which paid her a $120,000 salary. He paid, I believe, $500,000, which is an amazing individual donation from one billionaire. And it would be bad enough if that just went to the political activities of Ginny Thomas's PAC. Money's money. They don't need to raise it from someone else or spend their own money if they get it from Harlan Crow. But the fact that she was drawing a salary, that is just a transfer of $100,000 a year, $120,000 a year from a right-wing billionaire to the wife of a Supreme Court justice who presumably has a good relationship with that wife. This is a massive, massive multifaceted issue. Millions of dollars being transferred from just one right-wing billionaire who has a long-established vested interest in turning America's judiciary towards a more rightward direction. And we're supposed to just be okay with this. But here's the thing, while I think that's insane, you can probably gather that from my tone. My fear is that a lot of people probably will just be fine with this, because remember when I was going over all the other issues of corruption? They've already accepted super yacht vacations. They already accepted, another $150,000. It's weird how that number keeps popping up in buying the property effectively and then improving it. Just gift after gift after gift, endless hundreds of thousands of dollars. At this point, honestly, we keep asking after each one of these, why did Clarence Thomas not report this? And the answer, I still think the best answer, the easiest answer is because he was attempting to hide it. But we are starting to develop, I think, plausible reasons to believe there's another reason he hasn't reported it. Because he's getting so many gifts that he honestly can't track them all. Like, how are you supposed to keep track of all the vacations and the schools and the houses and the Bibles and the Lincoln busts and the political PAC donations? I'm not a big fan of Clarence Thomas, but a person can only hold so many things in their mind. Maybe he just slipped on a few of these. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.